Number 1. Pig zombies. Red and Bomb were getting ready to attack their structures when suddenly Red realized something was wrong. All the pigs were a darker green color and the area smelled like rotten pork. Bomb says to Red, "Something isn't right about this," just as Red gets ready to fire himself from the slingshot. Bomb gets sudden realization that the pigs are zombies and quickly says to Red, "Wait, stop!" But it's too late. Red has already fired himself towards the undead swine. Red screams in agony as he is torn apart and eaten by zombie pigs. They scream and gruel as they maul him, blood and feathers going everywhere. Bomb can't help but cry as he watches his friend get murdered by a bunch of screaming undead hogs. The pigs notice Bomb and start to run towards him. Bomb freezes in fear. Knowing it's the end for him, Chuck suddenly grabs Bomb and zooms to safety. Once they get back to the nest, they explain to all the other birds about what they saw. All other birds had looks of horror. One of the blues even shit themselves. They all decided it was too dangerous for them to tackle alone, so they decide to venture up into Mighty Eagle's cave. It's a long journey up the mountain. They climb over the rocks for weeks on end. In order to survive, they had to eat all 3 blues. They eventually reach Mighty Eagle's cave to see him eating pork while watching TV. Mighty Eagle looks over at them and smiles. "Hello," he says. All the birds start to try and explain the zombie pigs to Mighty Eagle, but he can't hear them because they're all talking at once. All the birds suddenly freeze while staring out Mighty Eagle's window. Confused, Mighty Eagle looks out his window too, and what he sees makes even the most powerful and feared bird freeze. A massive horde of millions of zombie pigs sprinting towards the mountain, looking like a dark green sea and smelling like a slaughterhouse. All the birds start to panic. They eventually decide to just hide in the cave until all the pigs die. Days turn to weeks, turn to months. And the day of all the pigs dying never happens. All the angry birds die of starvation. Except for Bomb, he is left around the corpses of his friends, with nothing to do except listen to the screaming of swine outside. He eventually decides to join his friends. He jumps out the window into the horde and explodes himself. The end. Number 2. Mighty Eagle's suicide. It was a cold, stormy day on Bird Island. It was Christmas Eve, and they were waiting for Mighty Eagle to show up. When he didn't, the birds started getting worried and set up their slingshot to face Mighty Eagle's cave. They fire Red up to the cave so he can check on Mighty Eagle. Red knocks on Mighty Eagle's door. "Mighty Eagle, you there?" No response. Red knocks again. "Hello?" No response. Red knocks once again, this time louder. "Hey, Mighty Eagle, you all right?" No response. Worried, Red tests the door to see if it's locked. He turns the handle and the door clicks open. Red exhales with relief and enters the cave. "Hey, Mighty Eagle, you in here?" His voice echoes. "Mighty Eagle? Mighty Eagle, are you in he—" He cuts off, tears welling in his eyes as he takes in the sight of Mighty Eagle's slumped over lifelessly in his chair, a shotgun on the floor, and his head blown to pieces. The carpet is blood-stained, and skull fragments and feathers are littered around him. Red lets out a cowardly yell and quickly returns to the nest. "Mighty Eagle, he's dead. He's actually dead. He fucking killed himself. With a shotgun." All the other birds join in on crying. The end. Number 3. Exploding fetus. It was a normal day on Bird Island, and all the birds were training. Red did decent, knocking down a tower. Bomb did great, blowing the tower to pieces. The blues did horrible, only breaking the glass on the tower. Chuck did good, going straight through center of the tower, causing it to collapse. Terrence did really good, completely decimating half the tower. But when it was Matilda's turn, and she fired the egg out her ass, instead of the egg exploding normally like usual, it explodes into blood and tiny little chunks of flesh, with small feathers poking out of the chunks occasionally. All the other birds stared in horror, and Red went to have a closer look. He walked around and eventually found and put all the chunks in a plastic bag. Together, the birds counted 311 pieces of bird fetus. All the other birds are ready to forget and put the unfortunate event behind them. But not Matilda. She feels horrible about accidentally blowing a baby to pieces and splattering it across the grass. She's developed PTSD from the event and may never recover. She's still alive, yet none moving, petrified, basically a statue. The other birds knew her existence was pain, so they decided to put her in a sack and burn her, forgetting about the event and trying to forget Matilda's existence entirely. But they couldn't. For the rest of their lives, they couldn't get Matilda's petrified body out of their minds. The end. Number 4. P. Piggy. The birds were shocked and happy as they saw the letter in the mail from King Pig. The letter read, "If you would like to have peace between the birds and pigs, please sign here. If you sign yes, I will throw a party in my castle, and we can eat all the fruit we like to celebrate our peace treaty." The birds instantly write down all their names and sent the letter back to the pigs, alongside a thank you note. A few days later, a giant ship arrived at the shore of Pig Island. The birds run over to the ship and happily greet all the pigs on the ship. The pigs all seem happy, and they eat fruit on the way over. Once they arrive, King Pig gives them a tour of his beautiful city, all the markets, houses, slave fields, and farms. After a short but sweet tour, King Pig guides them to his castle, where they prepare for the party. The party eventually starts, and all the pigs are dancing with the birds and having a good time. Red eventually notices that the Blues and Chuck are missing. He decides to abandon the party for a while and search for them. He searches the whole castle and nothing, but as he's walking around King Pig's room, he sees a book that looks different from all the others. He pulls the book and a secret door opens, and from inside the hidden room, he hears birds cawing and pigs oinking. Red walks into the room and is greeted with the sight of Chuck, the Blues, and 3 random pigs on the bed with King Pig. They were covered in thick layers of olive oil, and they played with eggplants. Red watches for a short moment, then decides to join in. The end. Number 5. Terrence goes rogue. Terrence was done with being known as the bigger Red, and he was always sick of Bomb calling him fat. So one night, Terrence wakes up with nothing to do and decides to think. He thinks real hard, and eventually decides he's had enough with the birds. He stomps on the eggs, stomps the Blues, and cuts Bomb's fuse, before stomping him out too. Terrence is suddenly overran with guilt and passes out. The next morning, Terrence wakes to several screams. The eggs were smashed and bloodied, the Blues were puddles, and Bomb was missing his fuse and his skull was crushed. The remaining birds yelled at Terrence and called him a monster. He was sad that his friends no longer liked him, and he begins to cry. His sadness fades to anger, and he charges at Chuck. Chuck is fast, so he gets away. But because Terrence is fat and uncoordinated, he accidentally tramples Matilda, leaving her as a pancake with blood leaking from every hole in her body. Red tries to fight Terrence, but that only ends in him getting torn in half. Terrence walks around and searches for Chuck. After a long time of searching, he feels a sharp pain go through his neck. Chuck had sprinted full speed into him, holding a spear. The spear pierces Terrence's neck, leaving him rolling around on the floor and bleeding from the throat. He eventually bleeds out, and Chuck does nothing but sit next to Terrence's body and cry. The end.